Good evening to all of you. I'm happy to participate in this program at a time when the whole nation and the whole world is in a state of flux and turmoil and anxiety and experiencing a lot of uncertainty. I welcome all the aspiring civil service participants, and I'm thankful to the KingMakers IAS Academy for making this getting this program webinar organized. The coronavirus disease, COVID-19, the name given by the World Health Organization for a disease caused by novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2. This virus is discussed all over the world more than for its medical or health reasons. The reason being, no other event in the recent history to our memory has impacted the world at large, not only from the point of view of health, but from the perspective of the economic impact, the political impact, the social impact. It's yet to be understood fully, but so much of crisis, so much of uncertainty has been created by this single event. There's a reason this has been a subject matter of discussion. I don't think any other subject has been discussed so much and debated, and so obviously we are also, every one of us is anxious to understand the dynamics and the impact of this particular thing on the economic and our social, political, and entire walks of life. Now, having said this, when an event like this happens, never before the country has been locked down. Not only in India, the whole world has been almost frozen for such a long period. It has never happened because rarely we know such an event has taken place. Even during World War, we have not experienced. இதை கொஞ்சம் enlarge பண்ணலாமா? Even during the World War, I don't think this kind of such a long period of complete freezing of the human activities has taken place. Now, having said this, the issue is we are all facing very undoubtedly, not only in India, the whole world has been facing the huge economic shock. It's not a crisis, it is an economic shock, because even the most developed economy in the world, their healthcare system has been thoroughly exposed. They really do not know how to react, because putting all their heads, all their ideas, they're unable to really decide what should be our future course of actions. And the country is coming out with the quick solutions, but all of us are of uniform view. After this coronavirus, we do not know when it ends. Okay, when we are able to find a satisfactory solutions or response, not even a solution, for a response for this particular problem. But all of us are unanimous that the world will face an acute recession during the coming period, not only in 2021, even 21-22. It's certainly, because the prediction is there will be a global recession. When it is coming to, when there is a global recession, so you all understand the economic implications of that. Okay. Now, never before the international travel has been curtailed. The movement, in fact, leave alone movement from one place to another, even one street to another street has been really curtailed for such a long period of time. So no one can understand the economic consequences and its impact on the extent, the depth of, and the seriousness of the impact of this particular thing on the all walks of life is yet to be really understood fully because we do not have the data. We are still in the midst of a crisis. We are not come out of the crisis. Now, in such a situations, one is understanding the economic consequences, and obviously we'll have to prepare ourselves for the days to come. Now, future prediction. It's a job of an astrologer because no one can predict the future with certainty. But future prediction is a matter of belief or faith. But even if you do not have a future predictions, you need to have a future plan, whether you like it or don't like it, notwithstanding the uncertainties. Okay, all we know today is the future is uncertain. That's what we know. Rest is to be seen. So how to prepare oneself or how to plan oneself for the future? It is a future planning. Why future planning is needed? Whatever the external factors, whatever the situations, the fruits we eat today, it's an outcome of somebody has planted the seed long back, many years back. Okay, and the person who planted the seed, he has planted the right seeds. The quality of the fruit you get and the quantity you get all depends upon the type of seed which has been chosen by a person long back. And not only that, it is not only a choosing, because the entire tree and the fruits are inside the seed. But apart from choosing the tree, he has also the right soil. And not only has chosen a right soil, he nurtured the tree all along. That is why we are getting the fruits. This is equally applicable to our economic policy making and economic understanding also. Okay. Because whatever we are today, it was an outcome of somebody has thought it fit, somebody has developed an institution, somebody has worked hard, somebody made a plan. Okay, all those things culminated into what we are today. Similarly, what we are thinking today, what steps we are going to take, and what is our understanding is going to decide the future of our children. So that is why all the more reason we need to have the right understanding of the current scenario. Future is not in the future because what you do in the present is going to decide your future. Okay, so that is why the future, we are not going to predict the future, we are going to plan the future keeping in mind what is to be done today. Okay, so we are going to decide our future by the way we understand the present, and we are going to act on it. Now, when you are talking about the future, you should also understand the past. We have to learn the right lessons as far as because the economics is, at the end of the day, it is both art and science. It's not a pure science, it is not a pure art, it's a mix of art and science. At the end of the day, it's a political economy. When politics and economics meets, the political economy starts. Okay. So when we have to, and economy doesn't work in vacuum, it works in a particular culture, because a lot of factors depend on the outcome. Economic outcome depends not merely on the policy, but on the environment where it is functions. The way you plan the policy, the way you plan your strategy, the world you plan your institutional mechanism to implement, that is going to decide the outcome of it. So we need to understand a little bit about our economic journey. We all know before independence, the GDP growth of the Indian economy was between 1 to 1.5%. Immediately after the independence, the initial 15 years, the economic growth was roughly around 4.1% from 15 to 1965. The growth of Indian economy was around 4.1%. A very considerable achievement. From 1 to 4% is really impressive. Okay. Thereafter, from 65 to another 15 years, the typical popular Hindu growth rate, the average growth of the Indian economy was 2.9%. The 3% we call it Hindu rate of growth. So it has slid down. After 1980, there are certain steps have been taken. We try to change the trajectory and the course. Okay. We all know in 91 was the landmark year because we made a fundamental shift. We understand if an economy to grow, you have to improve the competitiveness because you have to compete. So there should be an efficiency factor, there should be productivity factor. These are all very critical for the growth of the economy. So from 91, you all know that crisis has given us an opportunity to go to venture a new path. Okay. So then from that journey started the globalization, liberalizations, all combined together. The journey starts. So our best period of the Indian economy, we all know from 2004, 5 to 2007-8. The growth rate during that period was above 99%. In fact, 2006-7, India's growth was 9.6%, which is this period was considered as the golden period of India's GDP growth. Okay, so it was all three years it was above 9%, and in 2006-7 it was 9.6%. Actually, our growth was quite okay till 2011. After that, again, it has fallen. It continues to fall. In fact, okay. Now last 6 years, you all know the growth rate, and we have been in the sliding path because it's not very impressive growth rate. This is what our economic journey is. Okay. Now, right now, even before this COVID-19 crisis and the situation arising out of COVID-19, what do we stand? Because we even find there is no growth in job employment opportunities have been considerably reduced, and our per capita consumption has gone down very significantly compared with 2011, 2017, 18. Per capita consumption has gone down, and fiscal deficit has really gone up. In fact, apart from the official fiscal deficit, okay, now there are experts who say there are off-budget items like some of the subsidies or some of these borrowings has been shown in the books of accounts of the public sector undertakings, and some of the expenditures have been postponed to the subsequent years. Okay, if you all take into account, the real fiscal deficit is much more. If the combined fiscal deficit of the center, state, and all these things is even considered to be around 11% of the GDP. So there was on one side, there is the crises were looming even before the COVID-19 situations, and when it came as like a root shock. Now, today, where do we stand? Even in the month of, even in 2008, 1920, our GDP growth was said to be 4.1%. Here we have to keep in mind one of the things, when we are recalculated the GDP numbers, there has always been a debate and discussion and concern raised by the quality of the economic data and the integrity of the data. This has always been a debate because admittedly we have to travel a long way to improve both the quality and the integrity of our data. Some of the experts have raised concerns that the GDP numbers, revised GDP numbers, does not match with many of the economic growth parameters, growth indicators. Okay, this is a concern raised by it. So we have to keep this also in mind on one side. Having said this, so on one side, 2019-20, the GDP growth was 4.1%, and in the month of March 2020, it is reported to be minus 0.3%. Now, so we already had a economic scenario which was not very encouraging. Jobs are falling. We are unable to create a jobs. Fiscal deficits there is really a matter of concern, and the economic growth has admittedly fallen. In this scenario, we have to view the economic conditions of India in the coming period. Yeah. Now, the crisis has not yet to settle down. We really don't know the exact impact, depth, seriousness, and the extent of its impact on various areas of the economic activities. In fact, globally, even though it's admittedly there will be a recession in a global scenario, there'll also be understandably shift work from home, the what industry will survive, and there will be some creative destruction. Some industries will go away. So a lot of things have been debated. So in this uncertain scenario, as far as India is concerned, in 2020-21, a lot of estimates says, a lot of experts says there will likely to be a negative growth. And some of the CRISIL estimate, CRISIL report says the growth, expected growth or the likely growth during 2020 and 21 will be even minus 5%, which is unheard of it, because negative growth and minus 5% means it has got a huge impact on the economy. Okay. And the situation will unlikely to be better in 2020-21. Sorry, 21-22 also. There's a very, it is only again a projection, it is only again an estimate, but now there are valid reasons. All these arguments have been supported by a number of facts. Okay. Now, recently, RBI conducted consumer confidence survey, published only a couple of days back. And there also, so the consumer confidence is bad not only for the current year, even for the next year. Okay. So is extremely, you can say, disturbing. In fact, extremely not comfortable. So in this kind of scenario, what is to be done? No. So people used to say you have to be very optimistic. You should not be pessimistic. The question is not about optimism or pessimism. You have to be realistic. You cannot be in an imaginary land. You cannot wish away the facts. Okay. So whatever you plan, whatever you do, it has to take into account the realities. We cannot conveniently ignore. You cannot close your eyes and fail to see the economic realities of this country. Okay. Now, all over the world, the crisis is not only for India. It is the crisis for the entire world. India is not an exception to this. Or so entire the whole world is under pressure, under heavy pressure due to the sudden unexpected phenomenon, which is called the COVID-19 phenomenon. Now, under this scenario, we have seen how we traveled. Okay. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind is the economic development depends upon external factors and domestic factors. Domestic factors mean the policy we take, the implementation of the policy we take. These are one factors. And inevitably, external factors do influence. Actually, India has got a trade to GDP ratio, very high trade to GDP ratio. So Indian economy has been linked globally to a very great extent. Compared even our trade to GDP ratio is much higher than even some of the developed economies, because we have huge imports, we have exports. Okay. So we are connected. Our performance is also to a great extent linked with the external factors. External factors is not very obviously conducive. This would depend large on large ports, which is very important to keep the growth momentum continuous. So it's expected to be not very conducive for the growth of the Indian economy. Now we'll have to focus more on the domestic policy initiatives. Okay. Now, there are two things which has been debated in this current scenario. Now, this disruption which is caused has got an adverse impact on MSME sectors in particular and all other industries in general. And there is a huge unemployment. In fact, immigrant migrant workers itself is believed to be around 11 crore people. Okay, so they have lost their employment because they have moved back to their thing. So there is the unorganized sectors, even the organized sector, there is a lot of layoff. It does happen. So the issue is how to kickstart the economy. How? Because everyone needs support, whether it is small, whether it is medium, whether it is large, whether it is individual, whether farmers or unemployed or migrant workers or maybe people in unorganized sectors. Everyone has lost their not only the revenues, livelihood for a significant period of time. So they have to come out of it, which is very challenging task for individuals and organizations both. So what should be the role of government? Because that's been the debate going on. What is that government is expected to do in this kind of scenario? Admittedly, there is a huge job loss. Okay, there is no income. Okay. So all these things are there. There are two views are projected. Okay. One is the industry to kickstart, to the industry to come up. Okay. Now we'll have to, they need a support. There is no difference of opinion that industry need a support for them to come back and start our routine activities. To put them on track, government need to extend their helping hand. This is what one of the views which is expressed. Now the question is how to do that one. Now, what is available in the government? There are two. One is monetary policy, fiscal policy. Monetary policy is the domain of the central bank, Reserve Bank of India, and fiscal policy, the government of India and the state governments will have to do. And there are a lot of talks about the industries which was already distressed and they are already under crisis. Okay, the immediate need is the cash flow. So they need a cash to start their activities. Now, for that, if you have to increase the cash flow, how to give that money to the industry, whether MSME sectors. Among that MSME sector, admittedly, they employ the major chunk of the workforce. So what is to be done for them and for the other industries? The monetary policy, as you all know, the role of RBI, the monetary policy is the role of RBI, and there is single objective is the inflation targeting. So they always maintain the targeted inflation rate, which is 4% of the consumer price index inflation. CPI inflation, 4% is the RBI's targeted inflation rate. Now, as you all know, in 2015, RBI has signed an agreement with the Government of India monetary policy agreement. Okay. Now, we are also having a monetary policy committee, which is an independent body examining and then making recommendation on the type of policies. So one reason is to make available the money in the hands. So when you make available, there are two things. One is the quantum of money and the cost of money. Okay. When I say the cost of money, so obviously this is the time they cannot bear the higher cost. So to reduce the cost of money, you have to reduce the interest rate. Now RBI has done, they have reduced number of times the Reserve Bank policy rate, what we call it the repo rate. Now it is 4%. So they reduce the interest rate, the cost of money has come down. Okay. Second, so when the cost of money has come down, then they have to make available, so the banks can borrow liberally and at the lower cost and admittedly passed on to the industries. Okay. Second is then the quantum of money available in the hands of the banks and NBFCs should also be more. So the government, there are other instruments available with the RBI like maintaining the CRR, cash reserve ratio, statutory liquidities, all those things. So they also made more money available, short-term liquidity they have given to the financial institutions. Okay. So the RBI on their policy increased the amount of money available for lending and also reduce the cost of money. Now, the question is, traditionally, anyone lends money only if the industry is viable. Now, here is a situation where the risk factors are more for an industry. So everyone will hesitate to lend money because the risk is more. The risk is more now than before. So why should anyone lend their money? And even if the money is available with us, even if I can lend it at a cheaper interest rate, if the risk is higher, would I decide whether to lend or not to lend? So in this kind of scenario, it is an extraordinary situation. So normal norms, if you follow, you cannot rescue that industry. You cannot make the industry to put on track. So what is that you have to do is you have to tweak the norms, if not permanently, temporarily. For MSME sectors, government says we will stand as a guarantee. We will stand as a guarantee. Don't look into, obviously, if you look for the traditional way of looking the balance sheet, they don't get that money. So for the banks and the financial institutions, for the bank to extend the lending. Now, the problem is, there is another argument for this. They say there are certain industries are already stressed, already unviable, already risky. That's why NPA is too high. If you are going to lend this much money, again, it will be a further NPA. What's the point in giving to it? Okay. So there is no point in simply lending the money either to MSME sector or any other industries. You should lend money only to a viable sector. Only when you know this industry, after taking this support, will come out of this crisis and stand up and be able to come out. Okay, then then only it makes economic sense to lend money to that institutions. So identify the viable, put criteria to identify the viable industries and then lend on to those industries. Okay, no, don't lend then it'll a bottomless pit. Whatever money you put, it is going to be a further NPA. It's no way going to neither help the industry nor the bank. So there's no point in simply lending this. So you have to lend only to the viable industries. So there should be selective lending, not to everybody else. This is now the problem in India is the top 500 companies, because when the corporate income tax rate were reduced, there was an argument that top 500 Indian companies have got a cash reserve of 5 lakh crore. But the problem is it is not, because the risk factors is more, so they are not able to find viable investment opportunities. That is why it is not for want of money, it is for want of proper ecosystem and viable opportunities for investing the money. And second, why industry should invest unless there is a full capacity utilization. If already the existing capacity is not utilized, if there is a scope for more increasing the capacity utilization, investment is unlikely to take place, because either there should be a demand or there should be no capacities available. Then only there will be an investment will flow. Otherwise, there is no need. Nobody will invest this. Even if I give a money, people will not invest it. So you have to create an environment for investment. So one is you have to make money available. You have to make money available at a cheaper cost. Okay, so that will be competitive. And then lend money to viable industries. Okay, there are some industries, they call it creative destructions, will not be able to survive because they are not simply competitive. Those industries in the larger interest of the nation, and so it cannot be sustained perpetually. So they will anyway allowed to be die, allowed to be. But rest you will have to, the industry which are viable, which you should lend a helping hand, we should support it. So the policy initiative taken by the government and the RBI is such that you have to make available the money, you have to make available money at a reduced cost and identify the viable industries. Okay. And simultaneously, you have to do the reforms also. So unless you do the reform, structural reform, the competitiveness will not increase. Unless the competitiveness will increase, there is no scope for further investment and economic growth. So to accelerate the economic growth, the critical factor is you should have a proper ecosystem. For that, structural reforms are needed. Okay, long-awaited structural reforms are needed. So you should do that. Okay, and in fact, there is a saying, crisis is an opportunity never to be wasted. So there is an opportunity. So we should also undertake major structural reforms. So government, because someone has asked, is it the time to announce the reforms? Okay, the idea is the economy will be able to grow only when there is an environment, only when there's a competitive environment, only when there's an ecosystem. For that ecosystem, these structural reforms are critical. So one of the key things which has been announced by the government is decriminalization of many of the offences under the Companies Act. This has been a long pending demand. One of the key things which has been announced is that the amendment in the Essential Commodities Act, because there is a national market and the farmers are not getting the right price because the market is fragmented. There is restriction on movement of goods. There are a lot of reforms are needed in agricultural product marketing areas. So that has also been announced. So a lot of structural reforms are also been announced simultaneously. Apart from taking the monetary policy, these have also been announced simultaneously by the government. Now, there is a counter argument. They say, you are all right, you want to kickstart, you want to put on track the production, but without consumption, without demand, what is the use of production? Okay. Now, the lot of people have lost their job, they don't have any income earning. So in this kind of situations, okay, there is a tendency to postpone non-essential consumptions. And even for essential consumption, for want of money, it's not going to be the level to. So there is also equally a need to accelerate the demand. For that reason, yeah, okay, this is another argument, which is in the, because there are two reasons, because they're all vulnerable people, poor and vulnerable people, because they're in the unorganized sectors, migrant workers, daily wage workers, all kind of people. So they don't have any money. Therefore, even the survival, we'll have to give money. So when we have to really keep the poor happy and satisfied, because in the interest of the whole economic growth, because we cannot give lost amount population to suffer in poverty and deprivation. Then there will be no. Then we cannot expect a growth. So there is another argument, you should put money in the hands of the people. Okay, some amount has been put, because how much to be put is a matter of perception, because someone says 5,000, someone says 2,000, someone says 10,000 rupees. Okay, it's a matter of judgment. Now we'll have to keep one thing in mind. There's a thing called marginal cost of fund for the government. If government has to spend 1 rupee, they have to earn 3 rupees. That is the efficiency level of government. So government will have to think 10 times before spending. because to spend 1 rupee, they have to earn 3 rupees. Marginal cost of funding in India is around 3 rupees. Okay, so for 1 rupees to spend, they have to, the cost to the government is 3 rupees. Okay, so this is a factor which has to be kept in mind. Now, again, when you are uh, when you are telling this money, you know that we already have a revenue deficit. Revenue deficit means even for revenue expenditure, we'll have to borrow. And majority of the revenue expenditure, we simply don't have any scope for doing anything with salary, with pension, be it all this government running the government expenditures, defense expenditures, payment of interest. Where is the scope? And even for revenue expenditures, one has to borrow. So there is no space available to the government to create another to spend additional money. There is a limited scope available. So it's an extraordinary thing. So, spending is an option, but it has to be carefully considered. Nobody ever denied that all these people need, but the important, well, then what? So if I have to give 1 rupee to 3 rupees, it's against money. You can say, you may say more. So the option to directly give money is a very attractive and tempting option, which nobody can ever deny it should not have been done. It is to be done. To what extent one has to be extremely cautious, because this is a matter of concern, because easy to say it is borrow, don't bother about your fiscal deficit and all. So then you have to control, the government has to control inflation. Okay, and when you have to put money, sufficient goods have to be produced. So the process is a long and painful process, but there is no quick fix solutions for it. So the argument in support of it is these people urgently need direct cash, and this will also help to increase the demand. The government's argument is we are the way we increase the we support the industry to quickly come on track and start their activities. That itself will increase the demand, because it will increase demand includes raw material, intermediates, whole lot of things. So that demand will say, and when the workers are there, their salary they'll spend and all. Okay. And agriculture is another sectors where we are supporting it. So agricultural growth, fortunately, not much impacted by this. Okay. So that growth, when it comes, okay. Now, so the government is much cautious about direct transfer of money, even though the quantum and all, the long-term economic activities, it is a painful process, because one need to understand the economic policy is not like an event. It starts in one day, you announce a policy, and then within a time frame it will be over. It's a continuous process. It's a flow. Like fiscal deficit is a flow. So this economic policy is initiative is a continuous activity. This is going to take place over a long period of time. It's not that tomorrow or day after tomorrow or 1 year or 2 years we'll see that. You must have the China was a very great example. Okay, now in 70s, Chinese economy was on many areas are below par with India, comparable with India. I think great, but the vision, the policy, the strategy, they work for a long period, 20 years, 30 years. So 30 years down the line, the growth is nearly GDP 6 of many areas. Uh, Really, they almost the entire population out of poverty. Okay, so it's a process. This is an opportunity. Crisis is a look on our strength, look on our weaknesses, and work on it. Okay. At the same time, there is no quick fix solutions. And when you say there is no shortcut, it's a very, very long and arduous journey only. So when we understand what are the things which is required is, when you have to diagnose a disease, you have to understand the problem. And when you make policies, okay, policy is not made by a few individuals. So let us be very clear about it. In a situation like this, where the whole country has to grow, it is a collective wisdom of the entire people. Because without unity, without the combined effort of all of us, the economy will not grow. It cannot be grown by making some policy here and there. Okay. And that too in a complex country like India, where it is too difficult to understand the dynamics, cultural factors, economic factors, social factors, so many things to come into play in the economic development of the country. A country like this has to be law decentralized to see the process, get all the stakeholders, decision making strategies needed. We need to have the vision. No individuals are going to have a policy and implement that policy to make this country to grow, because it needs a collective effort. Okay, and not only the collective effort, because growth is you need to have an institutions. Growth will not take place in vacuum. I may have excellent policies, even if I have money and all. There should be human resources. There should be systems. There should be processes. Okay, everything should be in place. Okay, then only the economy will grow. Otherwise, it will not grow automatically. So our efforts should to continuously work it, because in fact the famous Deng Xiaoping's, see, we will cross over feeling the because we don't know what is underneath, because we cannot see the future. We are navigating to an unknown water, unknown area. So we are going slowly. That's why we are going slowly. We cannot rush because we don't know what is below, which one will hit. Okay, we cannot hit the rock and break it to pieces. So it is a slow and steady journey. It's a painful journey. It is not that one time even that some policies announced that is the end of it. The policy has to be worked on it. When they say that decriminalizations, okay, of all the thing, then the industry should also respond. Now, our regulatory mechanism, we should have a right regulatory mechanism. We should have a mechanism of contract. Okay, be competitive. Everything you put competitive, because we are. So this is two thing I would like to touch upon. There are a lot of there are hard feelings against China by many countries. So that could be a possibility of manufacturing facilities getting shifted from China, and India should try to attract all those manufacturing facilities. And it's a great opportunity for India. True, everything is an opportunity. Opportunities is there, but the question is, how are you going to get that opportunity? Now, let us understand the whole realities. You all know Donald Trump wanted Apple to ship their manufacturing facility out of China for the last 3-4 years without success. Okay. Why? Because a person puts his money, set up an industry in a particular geography after weighing all factors. Ideological investment is not an ideological decision. Okay? It's a commercial decision. It's not a decision based on any ideology or any political consideration. It is largely depend on the commercial. It is predominantly a commercial decision. So when somebody invested it, it is not easy to shift. Number one. Number two, a lot of industries which are in China, they do cater to the huge local demand of Chinese. Okay. So there is no reason for them to move out of China. And second, third reason is there are attractive destinations. We have industries we have seen is moved out of China, particularly low value added. Vietnam and Bangladesh. Okay. Why? Because India was not with the Bangladesh. If you want to have an additional manufacturing facilities in addition to what is existing in China, they need to have the competitive advantage. So unless they provide a competitive advantage to a particular investor, why should he come to India? So our aim should be not simply that now because of some reasons people will come to India. Our aim should be to provide a competitive environment so that industry will automatically come. We should attract industries. They have a valid and reasons, the commercial reasons for anyone to come and invest in India. To create that environment, to create that policy initiative, to create a system, to create a judicial system, to create a tax system, to create a bureaucracy, to create an infrastructure, to create a labor environment, all those things are really critical. So investment is a function of all those things. Okay, investment is not merely a function of one event will decide I will shift it from here or there or not. That's not going to happen. Okay, so we'll have to be very cautious, even though there could be arguably an opportunity that some industry may move out of China or some investment may come out instead of to China, other countries. To attract those investment, we need to be really create an environment. We need to really collectively work together. This is a very hard task. And ultimately, what lies is the competitiveness. If you are competitive, obviously you will be able to attract investment. Obviously, you'll be able to export it. Export market, at least in the near future, export market will unlikely to be very huge or significant. It may be, not that it's not that, but the opportunities are there. See, it's not that I have to export it tomorrow. If I say maybe down the line, up 4 years, 5 years, commodities. In fact, it has been mentioned that India, giving it geography, exporter of fruits and vegetables, should be the major exporters of fruits and vegetables. Okay, possibly we have to create an ecosystem. We have to be competitive. We have to create a storage, technology, productivity, so on and so forth. Okay, and we have to invest heavily on research. In fact, one of the areas which says there is going to be a in high value added or not from traditional to manufacturing to non-traditional, like artificial intelligence, work from home, so on and so on. So technology an environment, we already invest money in our educational institution, in our colleges, in our universities, schools, create a lot of money and effort in skill sets. And we'd also put a lot of money to reach people because of this so-called creative destruction, and some of the traditional industries will lose its relevance and will have to really vanish from the scene. The people who are employed will have to be redeployed. So we need to really look into those kind of things. So the economic environment after not I don't say after COVID, because COVID continues, COVID-19 is continues, and we never know when we will have a reasonably satisfactory response to this particular thing. But we'll have to live. The show must go on. We cannot really wish away that the lockdown cannot be a permanent phenomenon. That is understandably, because government has already started moving in unlocking, and we'll have to manage the thing. And as far as the policy initiatives are concerned, one is propelling the product supply side. Another thing, the government spending, a lot of caution and restraint, because it's a very tempting thing, but one has to be really careful considering our resource limitations. And ultimately, it is people's money, it's not somebody's money. Ultimately, every taxpayer will have to bear the burden of giving it. Okay. So these factors will have to be kept in mind. But equally important, because there is a saying that India has got a large number of young population. We have a demographic dividend or advantage, but this young population is not going to be young permanently. Okay, so we have to get rich before we become old. So the time span available is also, the window of opportunities available is not also unlimited. It is a limited window of opportunities available. We are young for a limited period, so we have to use that demographic advantage to our. So we should have the right policy in place. We should have an implementation. We should have the involvement of the people, and we have to work together. So it is very important for a country to come successfully. There should be unity. There should be unity of purpose. If you are divided on whatever grounds, okay, we are not really going to reach anywhere. The critical factor is we should work as a country, and any policy will have a legitimacy only when we take into confidence the all stakeholders. Okay. It cannot be in a country like India, a centralized approach will unlikely to yield any results, okay, and that we have seen also. So there should be a people's involvement, okay, and we should also understand the limitations on the part of the government. Ultimately, it is the people who are going to make the economy. It's not the government. It's not the policy alone. Okay, policy implementation is in the hands of the people, because policy can only be made, but it has to be implemented by the people. And the policy implementation is a function of the institutions you have, the bureaucracy you have, the judiciary you have, the law and order machinery you have, the political system you have, the free press you have, the creativity you are allowing it. Okay. All these things matter, because ultimately the economic growth, you have to bring into focus the individual's potential, individual's energy, individual's enthusiasm. This is what is going to make us a success story, and it is a process to be, you can say, watched. All of us have got a role to play, okay, but for this the public debate, and it's very crucial part, public discourse is very crucial. A time like this, every view has to be really factored, respected, acknowledged, and used for making a policy, because each one should be part of this process. Now, even though the future is uncertain, one thing is that we'll have to plan. We have to plan for an answer. No issue. because that is the nature of life. And during the course of our journey, we'll always correct it, because it's not that everything we decide. So again, I would recollect Deng Xiaoping's, we'll cross the river by feeling the stones every step in it is. Then depending upon that, how much depth we'll understand, and trying to work out our strategy to cross it. So all I would like to conclude is the current economic scenario is in a very fluid, dynamic thing, and we do not have too many data. Even our quality of data, integrity of data itself is very poor. In India, policy making is a difficult task because of uh, not only reliable data, even granular level data is not sufficiently available. So we don't have the data to substantiate the extent and the depth and the you can say breadth of the impact of the lockdown and the diseases on the healthcare system, on the productivity, job losses, and all. Okay. Whatever it is, we have to collectively face this one. And whatever policy announced by the government, it's in their wisdom they have announced it. And we may have different viewpoints, perspectives. It all will be debated. I think nothing is permanent, because these policies could be always amenable for changes, which I think in any democratic government would like to take into account and do it. You should know the important factor is you should understand, as far as because today much talked about the central bank RBI. So you should know what are the core objectives of RBI, and then what are the tools and instruments available to RBI, because ultimately they cannot allow the inflation also to zoom. But so the single objective is targeted inflation management. For that objective, what all tools available, the monetary policies are there, and then there are very number of instruments available in the hands of RBI. So time to time they've been using it, and you should also try to understand what extent, what is the objective of this, how this instrument is used. You should have the basic understanding of all this. On the fiscal policy side, one is the structural reform, which government has announced the number of steps. Okay, now how it is going to be implemented, because announcing policy is one thing and the implementation another thing. And our past experience shows the government's capacity to implement a policy is not very impressive, because we don't build, we are not succeeded in building too many to the supporting systems, infrastructures, and the organizations to achieve these objectives. This is a process, because every country has got a process. But I hope we can use this opportunity to collectively join and then to work on these areas, because we need to have a judicial system, we need to have an efficient dispute settlement system, we need to have a regulatory system, and we have a minimal intervention, because government intervention is always lead to unintended consequences. And we have to develop a culture of evolving policies with their clear-cut objectives and measurable objectives, because we should be able to measure the objectives, because that only, otherwise general thing we'll speak and forget about it. So we should work in that directions, and every area RBI's tools available for monetary policy management is itself you need to really work on it. Fiscal, every reform announced, starting from Essential Commodities Act, agricultural price monitoring thing, decriminalization of thing, regulatory bodies created. Uh, all these things is a subject matter which needs in-depth study and understanding. I hope during the process you will carry on. You will try to really understand these things separately. So this is only the introductory thing, and during the course of our interactions subsequently, we'll take out each subject separately in detail and work on it. So thank you very much.